Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's having a lovely day or night. I hope the BGM is soft enough so that you can hear my voice over it. I feel like you can. I'm probably gonna speak a bit lower compared to usual because of my voice. But yeah. Welcome to your first training session before you can officially work as an employee of VIOLATTE Cafe. I did make a presentation. Yeah, it's not a long one, but only because I do plan to talk during the different sections. Let me do this so that you guys can see the transitions. Bloop. Welcome. Tanoshimi desu. I hope you guys are ready. You can take notes if you want, but you know the VOD will be up if you ever need a reference. But yeah. This first little education series about coffee is going to be about brewing methods because there's so many. Some of you might be used to different kinds. Some of you probably already use some of these methods, or rather like one or two maybe, depending on where you work or where you are now. But we're gonna go over some ones that are more the ones that are widely known. Yeah. My credentials are that I was a barista for many years at a specialty coffee shop. For anyone who doesn't know and is wondering why I'm suddenly doing a coffee education series, that's the reason. Coffee has been part of my life for a long time. I've been wanting to do something like this for a while, but I think I just kind of lost sight of it because I was overwhelmed with doing a lot of different things. And since coffee was so integrated into my life already, it didn't really seem like something I should educate people on because I don't know. I wasn't sure if people were interested, but I'm glad that people are interested. Especially because now we have some people in EN that are into coffee. And I've been making some friends that are also into coffee as well. So I'm interested to see what they think too. But yeah, even the ones who microwave it. Maybe not naming names, but maybe they will learn today. But yeah, we're gonna start with basic brewing methods, things that you can do at home to brew yourself a nice cup of good coffee. And if you don't brew it at home, and maybe you order at a cafe, maybe after this, you'll recognize some of the brewing methods that happen at your local cafe, and you'll be able to understand it a lot more and what goes behind your drink, what happens behind the bar, what happens behind the scenes where you're not seeing how your drink is being made. So let's begin. Let's begin and start with our first brewing method. Behind the beans. I like that. I like that. Behind the beans. Anyway, let's begin with our first brewing method. Pour over. Now, this is a method I currently use at home. This is a method I use every morning, or almost every morning, because some days I just want to use one of those things that I got from Japan where, you know, it's already made for you and you just have to open it and put it over the cup and the beans are already ground. But majority of every day, this is how I brew my coffee. So, a bit of an overview on pour over. Pour over is a great way to bring out the subtle flavors of a particular coffee. And it allows for easy experimentation to calibrate exactly what you want in your coffee. I'm glad to see some of you also use this method too and love it. Using a cone and a filter, you can control each brewing variable to get the optimal flavor of the grounds. Manual brewers Manual brewers such as the B-House, Kalito Wave, or V60, these are all brands, are great for brewing 1 to 2 cups at a time, while there's larger format brewers like Chemex, which is another brand, that are perfect for brewing for a larger group of people. Grind recommendations are a finer grind for smaller pour-over cones, and it should look a little like table salt, or medium coarse grinds for larger brewers, and that looks like kosher salt. Some of you might not find a difference in these salts, and you might be thinking, salt is salt. But what you don't know is kosher salt is flakier and is more coarse, and the little granules are larger. So think about next time. Table salt is very fine because it's meant to just dissolve onto your food. Now, we're gonna get into this a little more. I'm not just gonna give you a vague overview. Actually, what's on the screen is what I use. It's not a picture I took, but it's a royalty-free picture. But that's pretty much the exact setup I use. I don't use a V60, which is what's in the photo, or I believe is in the photo. I use something else, but the idea is the same. That's how I brew my coffee. So we're going to act as if I'm using a V60. Hario is a brand that a lot of people use for their coffee, for their drip coffee. So you can't really go wrong. They have a lot of stuff that will set you up for success. Pretty easy to use. But I'm gonna talk you through how to brew your cup of coffee. Or how to brew your coffee, you know, in the little carafe. Can use an RTX 3090. I don't think you want to use that for your coffee. You might lose out on a lot of money and have to buy a new one. Use Kalita? Nice. I like that. I've used Kalita filters before. I used to use Kalita filters a lot until I moved to a different filter. But let me talk you through what you need. So if you are somebody that really wants to pay close attention to how things work and you want to control every variable, like it says on the screen, because pour over coffee allows you to control a lot of things. So if you choose to, it's very recommended to use a scale that measures in grams. And if your scale doesn't already have a timer built in, then having a timer with you will be useful as well. Now, this is for those people that, you know, you really are trying to take coffee seriously and you want the optimal brew. But you don't have to do this. You can kind of eyeball if you don't want to be exact. Excuse me. Other than that, a nice rule of thumb for brewing coffee, some golden rules. Overall, for every brewing method, you want to first keep your coffee fresh. So the way you want to do this is by storing whole beans and freshly grinding before you brew. And that does require you to have a grinder. And there's a lot of different ones like hand grinders or, you know, actual grinders with burrs that will actually like grind it for you as like a machine. But I know that for a lot of people, they don't want to do all that. They don't want to do all that grinding stuff, and they just want to, you know, spoon their grounds in and get started. And, you know, I'm not going to blame you. Ease of access and convenience. Whatever you prefer, whatever is easier for you. This is just for people who are very, very serious about it and they want to have an optimal cup. You will grind your beans freshly each time you want to brew. Yes, keep the beans whole. Keep the beans whole until you're ready to drink, then you grind them up when you're ready. But if you are somebody that needs the convenience and you need you don't have that extra bit of time, you know, and money to get a grinder, a lot of cafes, if you buy coffee beans from a cafe, you can ask for them to grind the beans for you. And you just have to let them know what you're using, and they should know what setting to grind your beans at so that you have pre-ground beans. Yeah, depending on what coffee shop it is. Now, I will say, if you use pre-ground beans, it will affect the flavor a little. Like, it's much different from freshly ground, because when it's ground already, you know, that's when different flavors and notes they already start being released because you've already ground them. So over time, You know, as time passes, all that stuff and the oils, they're gonna start to not be as potent. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, convenience and time saving, money saving, all things just to consider. That's golden rule number 1. That was a lot for number 1, but these are things that I have to preface you with before we go dive into, you know, recipes and things. Number 2 is your water should not be too hot. Don't make your water like scalding, because that will also affect the beans. What you are looking for are, you want to brew with water that's heated between 195 to 205 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius. It might be like, I don't know, maybe 90 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure. But 195 to 205 Fahrenheit is the ideal range that you want the water temperature to be at. Number 3, there is a perfect ratio, but this is something that you will have to adjust to taste. It's not something that, you know, I mean, if you are concerned about fine-tuning things, then, you know, that's on you if you want to fine-tune it yourself. But generally using 1 part coffee to 15 to 18 parts water is the ideal ratio. You might want to start in the middle of this ratio, like 1 part coffee to 16 or 17 parts water if you are just starting, and then you can adjust to taste. But generally that's the ratio that you want to go for. And then I already talked about this, but storage is key, because you want to keep your coffee stored in an airtight container and out of direct sunlight, and also away from heat and moisture, because you want to keep the beans fresh. You want to keep them good so that every time you get a good cup of coffee and nothing is, you know, affecting it. I would say even if you pre-grind your beans, I would still recommend you to use an airtight container, because, you know, the beans are already compromised because you've pre-ground them. So you don't want to lose any more flavor than you've already kind of begun to lose, sorry. Yeah, but anyway, continuing on with pour over. We're going to go with a sample recipe that is a 1 to 17 coffee to water ratio. And this should make 1 16-ounce cup of coffee. Yeah, there's a science to this. There's a science to a lot of it, and because there's a lot of ratios and timing and thinking about grind size and stuff, there's a lot to think about. But again, you know, it's up to you what you want to fine tune or not. Since I've worked with coffee for many years, I personally don't use a scale, and I just go with, you know, muscle memory and just, you know, what I've done in the past, in my experience. But this is a sample recipe, again, for 1 to 17 coffee to water ratio to make 1 16-ounce cup of coffee. You're going to use 30 grams of fresh whole bean coffee, and obviously when you're ready to brew your cup, that's when you grind it. Depending on if you have pre-ground or not, If it's pre-ground already, then you know, have it on hand. And then around 500 grams of hot water. And then you know your equipment, the cone, and something to hold the coffee in as it drips from the cone. A scale if you want to fine tune, and then a kettle and a timer if you want to fine tune as well. For kettles, I would highly recommend a gooseneck kettle. Those are the kettles where the spout is like thin and kind of like looks like a swan, like, well, gooseneck basically, because those you can control better the stream of water. The stream of water is thinner and it's not gonna just overwhelm the beans. Yeah, like in Animal Crossing. Yeah, you have. Oh, you have one. Well, I would guess so because you do pour over. Yeah, the thin one. The thin one. You can control the stream of water better because you don't want to just pour a bunch of water into the beans like all at once. So once your coffee is, once your water is heated to the ideal temperature or in the range of the ideal temperature, you place your paper filter or whatever filter you're using, because you know there's a lot of different kinds these days, but I'm not going to talk about that. We're going to assume that you're using a standard paper filter. You're going to prepare that and put it into the cone, and what you're going to do first is rinse the paper filter with hot water. You're not going to pour the coffee beans in directly, because what I've learned is that if you put the coffee beans in directly into a dry paper filter, what ends up happening when you brew the coffee, some of that paper taste will get into the coffee, and we don't want that. We don't want the coffee to taste like paper. Or, you know, we don't want it to have notes of paper. So we want to avoid that. That's why you wet the paper filter beforehand with the hot water. And it only takes a little bit, a couple seconds, and you discard the water afterwards. So, once you have done that, that's when, if you have whole beans, you grind your coffee. And once you have your grinded coffee, that's when you pour it into the paper filter that's already been pre-wet. So make sure the filter is wet first before you put the ground beans in. Sorry that I didn't type all this out, by the way, because I figured it would be easier for me to talk through it, because it would be a lot of writing and words on the screen, and I don't want to overwhelm you guys with lots of big text. But yeah, once you've placed your ground coffee into the pre-wet filter, you're gonna give it a little shake because you want to level it out so the surface is flat. Once you've leveled it out and the surface is flat, that's when, if you have a timer, you're gonna start your timer, and you're going to pour 60 grams of water so that you can wet all the coffee. Now, if you don't have a scale or don't want to use a scale, you can just pour enough water so that all the grounds are dampened. Well, not dampened is a bad word. Just so that all the coffee grounds are wet. And once that's happened, you're going to wait 30 seconds because this process is called blooming. Waterboard the grounds. I guess you could say that, if that's what you want to describe it as. Yeah, you're gonna wait 30 seconds for the coffee to bloom. And in this case, blooming just gives the grounds a chance to absorb all the water. And what I don't remember if this is why, but what I think is it's called blooming because after you let the coffee absorb the water for 30 seconds and you begin pouring more hot water, that you'll see that the crema will start to come out. And that's the like light brownish foam that you see sometimes when you are pouring hot water on coffee. If you properly let the coffee grounds bloom and you pour in the hot water, you're gonna get a nice surface of crema that like starts coming out. And that's like how you know your coffee has been bloomed enough. Yeah, it gives the grounds time to release what they need to release. So once you've let it bloom, then you start, you waited the 30 seconds for the blooming and you pour in more hot water in a circular motion. And you're going to do this until the water reaches 200 grams. Now 200 grams, I'm not sure how you can eyeball this if you haven't experienced it before, so I'm gonna leave it up to you. But yes, we're gonna pour it in a circular motion so that the water is covering the coffee grounds evenly. If you use a normal pitcher, you know, and you just pour the water in, it's not going to distribute into the grounds evenly, and that will affect the end result. And what I was taught is that when you pour the water in a circular motion, you're going to aim away from the edge. So that the water stays touching the coffee grounds and not, you know, lingering on the side where the paper filter is. Yeah, so by the 1 minute mark, if you're using a timer, the water should have drained mostly, maybe not all the way, but mostly. So once that happens, you're going to pour again in a circular motion another 100 grams of water. So the whole thing about pour over is pouring water over the grounds in a circular motion in intervals, because this allows the coffee grounds, you know, time to let the water pass through in stages until you have your complete cup of coffee. It's an intervallic process. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's a word. I've seen tutorials where they say you follow the character no when pouring. That's a very good tip. That's a very good way to describe it. Yes. I saw a video of someone doing it and the grounds bubbled up. Yeah, the light brown like bubbling or foam is the crema. So if it's coming out, that's a good sign that the coffee is releasing its oils, you know, during the process. So what you're going to do is you're going to repeat this interval process of pouring water in every 30 seconds or so until you reach a total of 500 grams of liquid. if you have a scale. And once you have reached 500 grams of water, you know, just let your coffee drain. Let the water do its thing and pass through the grounds. And it should finish around the 3.5 to 4 minute mark is the ideal time range. So once you do that, then you're good to go. You can enjoy your coffee. Now, it sounds, the way I guess I described it, it sounds like a very long and arduous process, but all it is just pouring hot water over ground beans in intervals to get a nice cup of good coffee. And if you haven't done it before, or for those of you that have done it before, you'll know what I'm talking about. I personally think it's quite a relaxing process. It allows me time in the morning to just adjust and process that I'm awake. And during the process of pouring the hot water, it allows me time to smell the coffee as the steam comes out, and that slowly starts, you know, waking me up as well. So to me, it's a relaxing process, and probably one of the only routines in my life that I've kept consistently for years. Like watering your plants in intervals so you don't let them be drowned in water. Exactly. You know your shit. I'm glad that we have people in here that know, because you can maybe describe it better than I can. It is like that. You pour the hot water in intervals so you don't just drown the coffee beans. Like if you were to water a plant, you don't drown the soil. Now, in my experience, I guess if I want to talk about what I personally do, like I said, this is pretty much the setup that I use in the photo on the screen. I do have a separate grinder for beans so that I can grind them fresh every time. And I have mine on a bit of a coarser setting, and that's what I find works for the beans that I use. But all beans are different. So if you really are up to it, you can experiment to try and get the optimal cup of coffee that has all the notes that are described on the bag. But you know, that's for people who really want to get into it. I think I've covered pretty much the basics of pour over. I think pour over, you'll often find pour over equipment at a lot of places that sell kitchen supplies or coffee supplies and stuff, since, you know, next to automatic brewing, this is probably one of the more popular methods. And the great thing about that craft, that's like the glass container underneath the cone, you can use that for a lot of things. Sometimes I use it for tea if I'm not drinking coffee. You can even use it as a watering can to water your plants, because it has a little spout. But yeah, that covers pour over. I hope that I gave enough information on the basics of pour over for you guys, and maybe you can try it out for yourself sometime. But there's other methods, other brewing methods that you can decide for yourself what would work best for you. The next brewing method we're going to cover is also one that's quite popular. It is French press. French press. French press is an easy way to make very full-bodied coffee. It is a full immersion method, as you can see, where the coffee grounds sit in water for 4 to 5 minutes, and then a filter is plunged through the brewing grounds. Through the brewing device, sorry, to press down on the grounds. Because the grounds come into direct contact with the water, and they remain in contact throughout the duration of the brew time, this method often results in the perception of a stronger flavor because of the insoluble material that remains in the final cup. Because sometimes, you know, French press, sometimes when you pour the coffee to drink, you get a few grounds here and there. And no surprise, the grind recommendation for French press is a coarse grind like sea salt. Yes. So, French press is a method that I don't use. Honestly, I don't think I've ever used French press before because it's just not a method that I want to use because it's kind of hard to clean after you're done brewing. That's really the only thing that stops me from doing French press. It's a hassle to clean after you're done brewing. But but it is a very easy way to brew. You know, you don't have to go through the intervals of pouring hot water, measuring how much water is going in and timing it and stuff. You just have to get ground coffee beans, pour it in and pour in the hot water, and then you just wait. But yeah, the cleanup can be quite the process. But basically, the same kind of recipe that I mentioned for pour over pretty much applies for this as well, except for the fact that you will need more grams of coffee and more grams of water, because this obviously holds more liquid than a pour over carafe. So you're gonna need more coffee and water compared to the pour over. That's really the difference of that. Otherwise, everything else about French press is self-explanatory. You know, you measure it out. You measure out the beans, grind them, and there's no, you know, paper filter or anything to pre-wet. You just pour the grinds into the brewer, and then you just add your hot water. Now the only thing here is just to keep an eye on time, because you don't want them to stay in there and steep for too long. Now, another thing that is recommended though with French press is that there is, it seems like kind of a blooming method where you wait 30 seconds after you've poured the hot water in and you stir it, the coffee. You agitate it and you move it around, you stir it up. And this will result in the same kind of foamy crema that comes out with pour over. And then what you're gonna do is around 6 minutes, you will slowly press the plunger to the bottom of the brewer. Don't press it in so fast because you're gonna create a mess. Do it slowly. And then after that, you just pour into your cup and enjoy your cup of coffee. But like it says in the third bullet point, it does result in a bit of a stronger flavor. You might feel that cups of coffee brewed with French press feel a bit heavier than with pour over, because pour over is a bit of a more delicate process than French press. I love French press, but I got laughed at by my mom because I didn't know instant coffee doesn't need to be in the French press. That's okay. You live and learn. Instant coffee dissolves. But yes, this is French press. Very simple method, but hard to clean. At least with pour over, you know, all the grinds are in a paper filter, so you can just pick it up and throw it out and then rinse everything. But this is different. All right. We're going to move on to the next method. Moving on to the next method is one that everyone is familiar with. Espresso. And this is one method that a lot of people, most people, don't do on their own. Because why? You go to a cafe and they do it for you. Because the machine is big as fuck, expensive, and hard to maintain. That's why you go to a cafe, for them to do everything for you. They require a lot of hard work to maintain and operate. So ugh. Sorry, give me 1 second. So this is espresso as it is, with no milk, just a shot of espresso. But a bit of an overview. Espresso is much more concentrated than any other brewing method. And because of that, it's a great way to amplify the characteristics of your favorite coffee. Espresso machines, the way they work is they use pressure to force water through the grounds, speeding up the extraction and making a very potent shot of coffee. While espresso has more caffeine per unit volume than most other coffee drinks, the total caffeine content is actually lower than a standard cup of coffee because of its smaller serving size. So, this is a myth that a lot of people think, like, you know, a shot of espresso will wake you up or whatever because it's stronger than just a normal cup of coffee. That is wrong. A standard cup of drip coffee, we're talking black with nothing in it, has much more caffeine than a regular shot of espresso. The caffeine content is different. What makes people think is stronger because the flavor is more concentrated in espresso. So that's why a lot of people think it has more caffeine, because the flavor is stronger. But that is wrong. A cup of coffee, a normal cup of coffee has more caffeine than a shot of espresso. So, if you got that one friend who thinks they know what they're talking about and they're like, oh, I don't need a cup of coffee. I need a shot of espresso to wake me up. Girl, you have more luck drinking a normal cup of drip coffee than a shot of espresso. What you think is waking you up is the flavor of the espresso. What you're doing is awakening your taste buds, not your body. And this is why people who drink a red eye, which is drip coffee with a shot of espresso in it, I think you're going through it. If you're ordering a red eye from me, I'm gonna ask you what's wrong. I'm gonna ask you what is going on in your life, or is something about to happen to you. Anyway, the grind recommendation is generally a fine grind, but espresso is it can be very finicky, which is why an espresso specific grinder is recommended. Because espresso is one brewing method where you can change so many different variables to get a good shot of espresso. There was a guy at the coffee shop I work at that got a white chocolate mocha with 20 shots. There was no milk in that drink whatsoever. That's allowed? They do that over there? That's not good. That's not healthy or okay. Whoever that person is that you are serving is not okay. And if they haven't yet, they should go to a doctor to get checked out. That is terrifying. That's fucking scary. My God. Realistically, you know, the average human does not need all of that to fucking wake up or whatever. Like, that's just ridiculous. That's just like, you know, after becoming a barista for so many years and learning everything and gaining all this knowledge, I think differently about every time my friends or people who I overhear are always talking about, oh, I need this much coffee to wake up in the morning. I need, like, don't talk to me unless I've had like my second or third cup of coffee, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I know the science behind this. I know what's really going on. But you are just... Anyway, espresso. Espresso is... So what I'll do is I can walk you through the process. Maybe not, you know, give you guys an exact recipe because it's really different for every bean. And this way, you know, what the next time you order your latte or cappuccino or whatever the fuck, you'll know what's going on after you order it. And maybe if it's an open bar and you can see what they're doing, you'll recognize the process because of this stream. So, espresso is something where you need it to be freshly ground each time. Like, I highly would not recommend pre-grinding beans for espresso. It must be freshly ground every time, and that's why they do it at cafes. So you're going to use however many grams you're using at the time after you've dialed it in and whatever. And you're going to... all of those ground beans, it goes into the portafilter, which is the thing that, you know, holds the coffee beans and has the handle so that you can hold it. And the beans, the grinds, go into the portafilter. And there's, you know, a lot of tools these days to help, you know, level out the coffee grinds or to keep everything in the portafilter so that nothing comes out. But, you know, if you don't have all that fancy shit or the extra stuff, you know, the ground beans go into the portafilter. And then you distribute it. You give it a little, like, not like a full shake. You just kind of jostle it around, just like to level it out. Level out the grinds as best as you can if you don't have extra tools to help you do that. And once you see and once you feel that the grinds are leveled in the portafilter, that's when you get your tamper, which is a device to help press all the grinds into the portafilter so that it becomes very concentrated and all just like, you know, it's like when you press sand and it becomes like flat like that. It's like that. But you're going to want to make sure again that the grinds are level in the portafilter. And when you tamp your grinds, you have to make sure that the tamper is also level as well, and that you apply even force. And you press down until you feel some resistance from the counter. There's specific equipment for you to kind of like place the portafilter against something, and you kind of want to use your whole arm to press down onto the tamper to evenly distribute weight, and so that you don't get arthritis in your wrist. Because if you tamp purely with your wrist, chances are you will end up with an uneven tamp and arthritis. So, and if you don't have a fancy machine that will tamp the coffee for you, you gotta pay attention to how you do that. Because an uneven tamp, when you're done and you bring it up at eye level to see if it's evenly, you know, pressed in, an uneven tamp will affect how the espresso comes out. And it's not going to be good. So you want it to be as even as possible, which is why these days people have come out with fancy machines that will tamp for you so that it remains level. But yeah, you tamp the coffee. Then what you're going to do is in the group head, the place where you put the portafilter, you're going to clear a small amount of water. You want to just release some hot water before you put the portafilter in, because it ensures that it's clean and nothing else is going into the grinds. It's like a short little purge. Once you've done that, then you can insert the portafilter and make sure that it's securely in there, and you place your cup underneath, and that's where it will collect the shot of espresso. And then that's when whatever machine you're using, you press a button or you flip a switch or something, and the hot water will be forced through the grinds with pressure. For a lot of cafes, they might have a standard recipe for what you're using at the time. A general goal is to have maybe 36 grams of espresso, and for the extraction time to be between 25 to 35 seconds. But again, this really depends on what beans you're using and how they taste, how the shot tastes after you've extracted. Now, a normal person, you know, doesn't really need to know this information unless if you work in a cafe. But now you know what kind of labor goes into making a shot of espresso. And at this point, you know, if you do have an espresso machine, or if you've worked with one before, or if you work at a cafe now, this is when you taste, you know, while you're dialing in the coffee. That's what it's called. Dialing in the espresso is you just brewing a bunch, or like making a bunch of shots of espresso until you reach the right parameters that the shot is good or servable. So this is where you taste, and you're gonna want to, you know, see if it's on the sour side, if it's on the bitter side, and you make adjustments accordingly. And you also want to watch as the shot comes out, because that will also tell you what's going on with the grinds and what's going on inside the machine. You gotta make sure if it's coming out too fast or too slow. If it's coming out too fast or too slow, you have to make an adjustment. Um, a standard, the standard recipe for doing espresso, like what I've just told you, counts as a double shot. Which is why at some cafes, you'll see that the portafilter has 2 spouts so that you can put 2 cups to capture the espresso on each side. And you would do that for people who, you know, ask for a single shot. The cafe that I worked at the time, every coffee drink was 2 shots standard. You would have to ask for a single shot, and we would separate it for you because it has 2 spouts. Some portafilters don't have spouts and it's just 1. In that case, it becomes a little bit hard to split it or to turn it into a single shot. I think the 2-shot standard it's not that strong. It's just, you know, it's just standard. But that's because, you know, I've drank a lot of coffee in my life and I've worked with coffee. Yeah, but I'm not telling you, you know, next time you're at a cafe, while they're pulling your shot of espresso, I'm not telling you to get in there and like look at the coffee going through and, you know, judging how it is. There are good baristas and bad baristas, you know, that's just life. But now you know what goes into it, and you'll be able to tell, you know, if the coffee is too sour. You'll be able to know that chances are the espresso shot came out too fast. The stream of espresso was probably much too fast. And if it's very, very bitter, it probably came out slow as fuck. And if it tastes good, or, you know, decent, then you'll know that the stream of espresso that came out was just right, or close to just right. Yeah. I know that there are some cafes, though, that they don't pay attention to these things. They don't pay attention to ratios and whatever, and, you know, they just do it, and, you know, coffee comes out and that counts as coffee. And you know that those places are not gonna produce a good cup of coffee for you. If you go to a cafe and you see them, you know, collecting the grinds in the portafilter, and they're not measuring, if they are not measuring, then I'm doubtful that they will serve you a good cup of coffee. Unless if you've had the experience and you know already how much coffee's coming out, then, you know, maybe you can get away with it. But even during a rush, I would still measure the grinds after each time it came out. You know, I put the portafilter on the scale, tear the scale so that it goes to 0, get the grinds, put the portafilter with the grinds back on the scale to see how many grams of ground coffee is in there, and I make sure that it's the same every time. Why? Because at our coffee shop, we were known to have good coffee and good espresso. And everyone who worked on bar as a barista went through all this training and all this knowledge building and stuff. We're not about to fuck up the reputation. I'm only able to do this stuff because I had to train so much and serve espresso and coffee and drinks under the watchful eye of my manager to make sure that everything tasted accordingly. And you know, not a lot of places do that now, unfortunately. And if your tongue and your palate is trained, you can taste it. You can taste if they've paid attention. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent for espresso because this is the way that I made it and drank it a lot. And you know, when you're dialing in espresso, you obviously have to taste the espresso to make sure it's good. And normal human should not be consuming all that espresso, so that's why you have a spit cup. Although a little bit of caffeine will still enter your bloodstream because you've tasted the espresso. I love that we need more details. Yeah, I mean, you've got to taste your shots after each change has been made so that you know that it's servable. I'm not trying to serve people shit. I have to taste it to make sure it's good so that I know I'm giving people good coffee. I need to make sure as the barista that the espresso shot will taste good whether it has milk or not. Whether it has hot water for an Americano or not. Oh my god, good luck. I'm so sorry. I only wish you the best. Have you ever tried or thought of going to a coffee chamber? No, I haven't. I've been to, in the past, when I was still in the industry, I've been to a few like latte art throwdowns at local cafes. Those were exciting because you got to see everyone who is interested in coffee, everyone who works in coffee. You can look at everyone's technique. It's fun. But I don't know if I would win a latte art throwdown. I might get to the top, but I don't know if I would win because my latte art skills only go so far. And I'm talking like traditional latte art, not like 3D latte art or, you know, painting a portrait or something. I've only been trained in traditional latte art. I can steam some good milk and ensure that it makes good latte art. I'm pretty sure I still have the muscle memory for that. You never really lose
the muscle memory. It might take a bit of time, but shouldn't take that long. Would you like to work as a barista again? Hell no. But I would like to make coffee again for my friends, which is why, you know, I have a goal of acquiring a small espresso machine that would fit in a kitchen so that I could make coffee for my friends. Or like, you know, if it's for an event, maybe I would do it, because then I know that everyone is there for the same reason for whatever event is going on. I really hope we can see your latte art someday. Have I ever, for those of you that have been around for a while, have I ever posted pictures of my latte art? I don't think I ever have. I think I'm a little afraid because some coffee shops use specific cups. But I feel like, you know, not every cup is unique. Some places use the same cups, right? So I feel like it would be fine. I would just have to check for reflections and stuff. I'll think about it. Damn, after all this time, after like 3 years, finally showing proof that I'm not all talk. Yeah, we can come back to this later, because I really want to get through the other methods. There are 2 more that I'm going to cover in this stream, and I want to cover them before, you know, we get too far into another topic. All right, we're gonna move on to the next brewing method. This one might be useful, or not might, but it would be. This one will be useful for those of you that like to travel, or if you like to go hiking. You're always on the move. AeroPress. Some of you may have seen this device around as well during looking at kitchen equipment or coffee equipment, and maybe you didn't know what it was. Very handy for people who are constantly moving. If you're always traveling and you want to be able to have a good cup of coffee even when you're on the go. Hi for you. I've been trying to convert Zeal into the AeroPress. Really? Has he ever... I mean, I feel like this would be a fairly simple way for him to brew coffee. Anything to get him off the microwave. I know. I said I wasn't gonna name names, but... But before we, you know, talk more about that, AeroPress. It's a great method for those, like I said, on the go. It's low profile and durable. It's easy to transport, and a great way to have good coffee for 1 or 2 while you're traveling. Unlike the French press, which sometimes will yield a little bit of grit or, you know, coffee bean at the bottom of your cup, The AeroPress results in a clean, full flavored experience because of the paper microfilter. And the recommendation for this is a fine to medium grind, depending on the coffee once again. AeroPress is a method that I don't use, but I've always been curious about because, you know, I travel a lot for work, but I've never used an AeroPress, which is strange. I should have used it by now, but, you know, like everybody, I have my own preferences. But, yeah. Since you're on the go, you know, maybe you don't have a scale or a timer or whatever, but there is not a lot of space for, you know, a lot of coffee. So you're gonna want to adjust your recipe, adjust your ratio. A good standard recipe to use is a 1:11 ratio of coffee to water, which will make a 7-ounce cup of coffee. And since there's not a lot of space, maybe like 18 grams of fresh beans, and 200 grams of water, hot water. So what you're gonna do here, this is different because the filter is small. It's small and it fits exactly in like that tube. So what you're gonna do, even though I've never used this, you know, I'm familiar with how it works and the pieces of it. So what you're gonna do is, just like with pour over, you want to wet the filter beforehand. So you place the filter in the cap of the AeroPress and you do the little, you know, hot water rinse, wetting it. And you want to do this outside of the brew chamber. You don't want to do it like, you don't want to screw it in yet. So once you have your pre-wet filter, you're gonna, you know, weigh your beans out if they're fresh and grind them. And you're gonna prep the AeroPress. So what you're gonna do is turn it upside down, insert the plunger, and it should be approximately like 1 centimeter into the brewing chamber. It's supposed to create a tight seal. Because at the end of this, it's going to be the pressure of your body weight, you know, that pushes the water through the grinds. So once you have that tight seal with the plunger, that's when you want to add your ground coffee into the brew chamber. You might want to use a funnel or something, like a small funnel to go, so that you don't create a mess. But again, with like the pour over, you shake it to level the grounds so they're, you know, straight across and level and not, you know, everywhere. And then this is where you add in the water. And, you know, if you have a scale and timer, then you use those as well. This time though, you are gonna, similarly to French press, you pour in all the water and you agitate after a bit of waiting. You stir the coffee with the paddle. Usually AeroPress, when you buy it, it comes with a paddle that will fit in the brewing chamber. Use that paddle to stir it around and make sure all the coffee grounds are saturated and wet with the hot water. And after you do that, you screw the filter cap onto the brewing chamber. After this, if you have a timer, You're gonna wait maybe a minute and a half. And you know, this is all you're doing this while it's upside down, because you're not pressing it yet. So once the time has come, once the time has come, you will flip it over, because you've already screwed on the filter, right? So it's safe to flip over, and you want to flip it over onto the cup that you're using, not like, you know, you don't want to just like flip it and hold it over your table. Flip it over onto your cup, and then you gently press the plunger for around 15 seconds, and there should be a sound, like a hissing sound, and that's when you stop. So when you hear the hiss, that's when you stop and you have your cup of coffee. It's pretty simple. I don't even want to talk about All Stars 10 right now. So much shit going on in there. But yeah, that's where then you end up with your cup of coffee. Yippee. The equipment is so small, and it's like made of hard plastic, which is why it's durable, and you can like bring it around anywhere. As opposed to with pour over, the cones typically are, you know, made of ceramic or glass or whatever other hard material that it may be fragile if you are traveling. Yeah. Honestly, you could even do this on the plane. If, you know, at home, you pre-weigh and grind the coffee, and since, you know, it's same day, it's not like the grinds have been grounded for a long time. You pre-grind them, and then you bring all this shit with you. And once you get onto the plane, all you need to do is just ask for hot water. Just ask for a nice cup of hot water, and then, you know, and an extra cup so that you can have the coffee inside there. You can do AeroPress on the plane. But obviously, some people don't want to deal with all of that while they're on the plane. They just want to sleep or, you know, whatever. But I know that some people do that. They really want a good cup of coffee while they're in the air. Yeah, exactly. That's why a lot of backpackers, hikers, if you're hiking, people who do van life, they more often than not have an AeroPress. Like I said though, I've never used it myself, even though it kind of makes sense for me to. Yeah, when I'm traveling, I just get coffee from other places though. I don't really bring any equipment with me. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the last brewing method that I have in this presentation, which, if you work in an office, you already know. Sometimes this is all that's available to you. Auto drip brew. The classic coffee machine. The machine that people associate with going to the office. Old, reliable, exactly. Now, these are not exactly known to give you a nice cup of coffee. It will just simply give you a cup of coffee. But nowadays, you know, people have created auto drip brew machines that will give you good coffee. And that's pretty awesome, especially for the people who do work in an office or have a typical 9 to 5, or, you know, they just don't have time to do all the other brewing stuff. And they just want to press a button and have the coffee made for them. And that's totally fine. Do what works for your lifestyle and what you prefer. So these is for those people. The ease of use, the convenience, makes it one of the most popular ways of brewing coffee. It's probably the most well-known and popular way to make coffee at home too, for those, like I said, if you don't want to deal with all the brewing stuff. It makes coffee fast and for a lot of people. And like I was saying, a quality version can be an excellent way to brew better coffee at home. You could get an upscale version of the typical auto drip brew to make you actual good coffee. And typically for these, a medium to fine grind will work. Yeah, I feel like families have these machines because, you know, it makes a lot. It makes enough for you and your partner to just have while, I don't know, the rest of the family wakes up one by one or whatever it is. Now, I feel like I don't have to explain how these work. You just put in the filter, put in the ground coffee, fill that back part up or whatever with water. It doesn't even need to be hot because the machine will heat it up for you. And then you just press the button, you know, and then you just wait and it's done. By the time maybe you're done brushing your teeth or washing your face and everything and putting on your clothes. But like I said, nowadays there are better versions that will actually pay attention to timing and things like that to actually give you a good cup of coffee that is better than just okay. Because a lot of these old or typical auto drip brew machines, they will just brew a cup of coffee that is tolerable. Maybe not even tolerable sometimes. It's loud when your aunt uses it. She probably need to get a new one. If it's making loud sounds, it's at its end. You gotta replace that. Oh, recently adding coffee stuff to the menu. All this knowledge will come in handy. Yay, I hope it does. But I feel like in a lot of boba places, they don't really pay attention to all this because what matters is the boba and not the coffee. The only problem I have with this one is if you're a person who forgets to change the filter or clean things, it can be very dangerous because of mold. Yeah, although this machine is very convenient and has a lot of ease of use, you don't want to ignore, you know, the fact that you do have to clean it. Otherwise, yeah, stuff will not go well. And the longevity of the machine will be shortened. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of obvious I don't use this method. It's not necessary for me. I have thought about what it would be like to have the upscale versions that actually make good coffee, because then it's kind of game changing to only press a button and then to have it be a good cup of coffee at the end. But you know, it doesn't really beat having a cup made with a labor of love, somebody who's measuring everything and timing it so that everything comes out well. Oh my god, you ride horses in real life and you have a show? Good luck! Yo, Uma Musume in real life? Good luck. Yes, coffee is an art. Thank you. A lot of people, obviously the average person doesn't really think about this stuff. It's just something that people drink to wake up and don't really pay attention to the taste, unless if it really, really tastes like shit. So, all right. So this was the last brewing method that we'll be going over in this stream. But I do still have one more slide that talks about which coffee should I use, and also talking about flavor notes. This is the last slide. So once you've decided, you know, your brewing method of choice or what you want to experiment with or try, you might think about, like, what beans do I buy then? Which ones are good? But like I've been saying throughout the stream, while some coffees may shine in a particular brew method, the general rule is to just do what you prefer. But if you can't decide what sounds best, here are some things to consider. Flavor notes. On every coffee bag, there should be flavor notes that will tell you what you can expect out of the coffee that you're buying. And these are flavor notes that are put there by the people that sell it, because the people who created it tasted the coffee beforehand and they decided these are the notes that we are picking out. But flavor notes are very good to consider for the brewing method in order to get the best out of the coffee. When's the quiz? Nah, it's okay. It's on you if you want to remember these things and get, brew a nice cup of coffee for yourself sometime. But anyway, if the flavor notes on a coffee are light and bright, a brew method that highlights the flavor clarity is probably best. If you want to be able to pick out more subtle flavors, a pour over would be the right call because of the delicate process. If the coffee you're brewing is heavy and rich, if they have heavier and rich notes, think like mocha, chocolatey notes, stuff like that. You probably want to go for a French press or espresso. A lot of coffee shops, the espresso they use for your like lattes and things like that, they tend to be ones that have a rich profile because the chocolatey mocha dark chocolate notes are ones that pair well with steamed milk, which will yield in a good cup of coffee. So those are things to consider. A good rule of thumb: if the flavors on the bag sound like a fruity lemonade, it's probably not going to pair as well with the method that tends to produce a coffee with the texture of hot chocolate. The inverse is true as well. If the method you're using yields coffee with a thin tea-like texture, you're probably not going to want to pair that with richer dark chocolatey flavors. So, some examples of that, because I know that that was a lot of words and vocabulary, but like it says, for subtle flavors, but also because pour over is such a delicate process, it will yield coffee that does have a thin tea-like texture, which is good for picking out subtle flavors, but it would not really work so well with coffee beans that have rich and heavy notes, because then your cup of coffee is no longer delicate. And if your coffee has notes of different fruits and stuff, you're gonna want to taste those fruit notes, those fruit flavors, the feelings of, the juiciness sometimes, like that's how people describe it as well. So you're gonna want to go for a method that brings those out and doesn't hide those things away. But again, like in the previous part, just do what you prefer and what works for you and what you think tastes good. It is amazing when you can taste the flavors. I remember excuse me. I remember when I first started training, my palate was not there at all. It was untrained. I just thought espresso kind of just tasted sour and that's it. And when I went to my first class, I remember the instructor giving everybody different shots of espresso and telling us to taste it and describe what we're getting and what we feel. And it was okay to, say whatever. And everyone going around the room, people were saying stuff like, oh, I really get the fruitiness in this. I'm really tasting the grapefruit flavor and the strawberry and whatever the fuck. And I was sitting there, coffee noob, and I was just like, what the fuck? Are we tasting the same shot of espresso? Are we tasting the same coffee? And I looked at the instructor and I was just like, can I be honest? It just tastes sour to me. And obviously it's okay because you're just learning, you know? You're not going to be able to pick those things out immediately. But over time, as I continued to, you know, take these courses and learn about brewing methods and getting to taste different kinds of coffee in these different methods, I slowly began to be able to pick out the different tastes. And I remember the first time I was able to pick out a fruity note and not just think that it's sour, I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. This is kind of crazy because it does have notes of it. And I was just like, what happened? That now I'm able to tell. But it's from continuous learning and like continuous tasting. What I did in these classes, I tasted a lot of espresso, I tasted a lot of pour over. And that's what really helped train my palate. Tasting the different coffees while looking at, you know, the little place cards, seeing what notes are meant to come out and remembering, oh, this is what it should taste like if it has this note or this kind of texture. How long did it take? Maybe like a month or something. I don't fully remember. It just like happened as I was taking the courses. And I was able to take these courses free of charge because I worked at a cafe. So the carrier of the beans that we were using, they offered classes. So that's how I was able to train. Like they also offered classes to the public, but you had to pay for those classes. How do they get that flavor note into the shot? Well, it all starts from the way the bean is roasted and also the origin of where it grew. Because some origins grow fruity coffees or coffee beans, sorry, and some other origins grow more chocolatey beans. It's all different. Region is a factor, and after region, thinking about how it was roasted is another factor. Also, the way the beans were dried out is a factor as well. The whole process of bean to cup affects the notes. Because if you get a bag of beans that has a certain notes on it, but if you're not trained, you won't be able to bring those notes out. And what you're gonna get is a shot or a cup of coffee that kind of tastes mid, and it just kind of tastes like whatever, and you can't really get the notes out of it. So everything comes into play. Everything. And that's why, me personally, I enjoy coffee from Ethiopia. Because Ethiopian coffee beans most commonly produce fruitier coffees, more floral coffees. And I enjoy those the most. Especially when you're dialing it in or you know, figuring out the right parameters to bring out the floral notes and the fruitiness, being able to bring those out and tasting it and then really picking them out and knowing that that's what it is and you've successfully brought it out, it just felt so nice. Like it was, I felt so accomplished. Coffee, yeah, coffee is really a delicate thing. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot of dedication. Yeah. So like I said, this is my last slide, and I think probably the end of my brewing methods course for today. But we can just keep chatting about coffee. I'll just go back to the first slide. So that, you know, it's just up there. This is why I like going to specialty coffee shops, because chains don't really pay attention to these types of things. And I think my throat is letting me know that I talked too much. Excuse me. But I hope that this first course, I hope that you guys were able to learn a lot for those of you that were interested. And I hope that it was fun to learn, because this was actually very fun to talk about and like teach. It felt nice. Usually when I meet up with friends and they talk about coffee, I just like go on a tangent and I talk about coffee so much, and then I'm like, whoops, my bad. It's because I was trained for this. But yeah, this isn't like a one and done. I'll be doing more. I'll be doing more coffee training streams. And that's why in the title I called it a coffee training series, because this is only the first one. Somebody asked if I talked about cold brew. No, not yet, because I was mainly talking about brewing methods that most people are familiar with, or methods that people know of. And I don't think the average person knows how cold brew is made, or not really made, just like isn't trying to do it themselves, you know? Even I don't make cold brew at home because there's so much work involved. And the other thing is like, well, I just remember when I was working at the cafe and we had to make cold brew, you know, for a lot of people. God, all those gallons of water, carrying them and pouring it into all those coffee grounds and everything. Oh God. This is the first in the series, yeah. Do we have any homework? Homework? Even if I did give you homework, how would I check? Yeah, cold brew is not really that fun to do. Cold brew is also pretty annoying to clean as well. A baking series? I don't know if I'm qualified for that. Cuz baking's like a hobby. At least with coffee, you know, it was my career for a while. Well, it is soaking them in cold water overnight. But, you know, the equipment involved is like, it varies a lot. I don't know if I did do a hand cam for brewing coffee, it would have to be very simple. But another thing's like the scale is quite reflective as well. So I'm a little like, I don't know. It's tricky. The thing about coffee is a lot of the equipment is reflective. The machine is reflective. The pitchers are reflective as well. The scale's reflective. The portafilter's reflective. Everything's reflective. Yeah, you knew that's what I was referencing. I will not wear a ski mask and sunglasses, then I can't see what I'm doing. I would be leading you guys astray, and I would probably make a backup of coffee. I mean, I'll keep thinking about it though, because there's probably some sort of way, and I just don't know it yet. I'm not sure. But yeah, the other thing is I gotta think about what to cover next in this series. 'Cause there's so much stuff I could talk about. I'll think about it. I'll think about it and then we can go from there. I could do like a brewing methods part 2. I could talk about origins. I could talk about the actual process. Ooh, I could talk about the process of bean to cup. That would be so fun. Okay, I'll keep thinking about it. This is like a free course. Yeah. I'm doing this for free. As long as if you know, now you know what goes into all of this, into your cup of coffee. Or when you go to a nice cafe and they're making your drinks. And if they make a good cup of coffee or a good latte art and stuff, you'll know what goes into it, what they're doing behind the bar. Yeah, be nice to your baristas. Tip them well. If you're in a tipping country. And, you know, unless if your barista is an asshole, then, you know, fuck them. But generally, just be nice to your baristas. Chances are, whether they're experienced or not, they've probably burned themselves a bunch of times making all these drinks for everybody. Since I used to work in the industry, I had barista hands. They were very dry and rough and always smelled like coffee. My clothes always smelled like coffee. My hands. The amount of times I've, like, you know, burned myself on the machine with hot water, with hot milk. Coffee smell sounds like a plus. It sounds like a plus until it isn't, because it's your job and you smell it every day and you just want to get home and not smell coffee while you're trying to sleep at night. That's why I know Gold Bond Intensive Care Hand Cream works, because it healed my barista hands. Oh. Well, thank you so much everybody again for coming to my course. I'll think about what to do next. But in the meantime, I'll go through some of the stuff that you sent from this stream. Let me just move myself over a bit to look at my main monitor. Hey, as long as you guys learned something, then I did my job. But Yeah, oh my god. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry and I need to eat something, and I'm also sleepy. Okay. Oh, you can see my mouse while I look through everything. Okay. Let's oh, let's get started. Evie, welcome back. Bandi, Jenny, and Aoi, thank you all for the supas. Thank you, thank you. Tototo, welcome to the Ukiverse. Sabrina, thank you for the supa again. Ellen, thank you for the 5 gifted. Amit-chan, welcome back. Tian Tong, welcome back for 3 years. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sayapi, welcome back as well. Thank you. Soranon, Hasuda, Sayanu, and Alyssa. Thank you all for the supas. Thank you, thank you. Hasuda, I think you made the thumbnail, no? Yeah, you did. Yeah, thank you so much for making the thumbnail for this stream. Thank you. Kina, welcome back. Jojo, thank you for the supa. Thank you, thank you. Owala, Rismo, welcome back both of you. Moiso-chan, welcome back for 3 years. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Ellen, Say, and Chloe, welcome back everybody. Thank you so much. I think I'll be able to properly go through and thank, you know, the backlog that I have when my voice is fully healed. Right now it's not. I'm in that state where I'm like, you know, I want my voice to heal fast because I have stuff to do, but I can't. That's not how it works. I just have to keep trying to nurse it and make sure that I'm not overdoing it. Yeah. Ian, welcome back. Thank you. Oh, congrats on graduating. Yippee. Treat yourself. And Christina, thank you for the supa. Thank you, thank you. Ugh, okay. Alright, let me find somebody to raid. Oh my god, I almost clicked end stream. Shit, that was close. Redirect. Haha. Let's go redirect to the microwave man himself. All right. There we go. Anyway, thank you guys again for today. As always, stay hydrated. Excuse me. Eat something if you're hungry. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other when you can. have fun on Zeal's stream, read his rules, and I'll see you tomorrow. I really hope that my voice gets better. I feel like maybe, is it because I keep talking so much during streaming that it's like affecting me? I don't know. We'll see. I'll just keep, I'll keep drinking my stuff and hope for the best. All right, anyway, mwah. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum. Da 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 dum. Ba dum. Ba da da dum. Bum. Bum. Ba da 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 dum. Ba dum. Bum bum bum. Ba dum. Ba da 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 dum. Ba da 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 dum. Ba da 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 dum. Bum bum. That's all.